Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode. And I have two things to tell you. I always have some things to tell you, my beautiful, amazing, outstanding audience. These are two very important things that I have to reiterate over and over. Number one, if you did not know, on July 12th of 2025, Elvin Freitas and I, along with our partner Dean Hoke, are going to be executing upon the first annual, hopefully, inaugural, whatever word you want to put in front of it, Podcasting Higher Education Conference, July 12th on the campus of University of Illinois, Chicago. We will have the first ever higher education podcasting conference. And why should you care about that? I care about it because we're trying to do it for the first time as an independent entity. But podcasting is a real medium that you should be taking advantage of. If there is one thing our recent election, our presidential election, has showed us, it is that the power of podcasting is very real. You get one-on-one with the person you're trying to target. So podcasting for enrollment, podcasting for marketing, for alumni engagement, for academic enrichment, for teaching, for learning. We're going to be covering all those different things in a single-day conference, July 12th in Chicago, and we hope to see you there. You can check out higheredpodcon.com. That's hard to say, higheredpodcon.com for more information, or follow us on LinkedIn. Number two, also equally important, if you write for higher education, if you're a writer or want to write something about your college or university, perhaps it's a great program that you have, perhaps it's an initiative that you want the public to know about. There are only so many places you can go with that writing. You can go to a trade publication, but oftentimes those trade publications, if there's not a journalistic angle to it, perhaps they don't want to tell that story. At the Ed Up Experience, we've said, we serve you higher education. How can we do that better? Well, we could do podcasts. We can give you the light. We can give you the microphone. But if you've written something, we want it. We want to publish it on our site, the Ed Up Experience. So we've taken a piece of our website, we've turned it into Ed Up Editorials, where you could submit your writing and we will publish it, we'll get you a link, and we will promote it all over LinkedIn to our colleagues across higher education. So think about something you want to write it and submit it to edup@edupexperience.com. That is not hard to remember, edup@edupexperience.com. So talk to your colleagues, your fellow administrators, faculty, staff. If you want to tell a positive story about higher education, we want to be the one that publishes it for you. Okay, now I've done enough talking. My guest just sent me a text message and said, stop right now. No, he didn't do that. Ladies and gentlemen, I have another amazing college president for you to talk to or to hear from today. We've just passed 350 college and university presidents interviewed on this podcast. And, one thing I can tell you about those interviews is that the job of a college president does not get any more or less interesting. Every single day is a new adventure, unlike the day previous and probably unlike the day tomorrow. Let's bring him in right now so he can tell us about what's going on in his area. He's Dr. Rick Bailey. He's the president of Southern Oregon University. Rick, welcome to an Ed Up Mike. How are you?
Hey, good, Joe. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to all of that bloviating I had to do.
No, I'm super excited. I'm going to look at my July calendar and see if I can get to Chicago.
Hey, man, we would love to have you. We would be ready to have you. Maybe put you on a stage on a podcast.
Let's go.
We're ready. But you're always ready. We had a chance to meet recently at the Ask You conference. There's so much going on in higher education right now. But let's level set. Let's first talk about Southern University. Where are you besides the obvious? What do you do and how do you do it?
We're excited to announce the first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the Ed Up Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural Conference. So that again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. So yeah, Southern Oregon University, we sit in the Rogue Valley, southern part of the state. We are about as far south on Interstate 5 as you can get without crossing into California. So that's how close we are. We sit in a beautiful valley. The travel.com, it's a big travel blog. This past summer had an article that the headline of the article was "The coziest college town in America is in Oregon," and it was all about Ashland, Oregon, and Southern Oregon University. We really love it, and there is something just beautiful about this place. It's a city of 23,000 people. We are a school of about 5,300. So we're the biggest employer in town. The next biggest city close to us is Medford, about 15 miles away. So I think we're a school that's in the sweet spot. I always talk about this. It's kind of the reason I came here. It's a big enough school that no matter what a student is interested in, there are things here for that student. And yet we are small enough that if you walk on our campus right now and randomly select a student, they will tell you that there are faculty and staff members who know them by their first name. That's who we are as an institution. So I love being here. Been here a little over 3 years now.
So I like that, the coziest college town in America. I think that there's a value proposition. When we talk about colleges and universities, there's it's like a bunch of green apples, and how do you create the red apple in the bunch?
Yeah.
How do we differentiate when there is so much parity or similarity between institutions? Sometimes regionalization helps, right? Because when you're the biggest employer in the region, that's differentiation. That surely is a way to differentiate. But being a cozy college town and having somebody recognize that also is a big point of differentiation. Do you think about that, differentiating? How do we stand out?
Yeah, it's a good question, Joe. And I do think about it. So to answer your question, I do think about it. But I also think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that green apples are pretty good too, right?
Oh,
so
I like this.
Yes, we should be a red apple, and there should be some things that we do that are super unique. But let's also recognize that there are colleges and universities all over the country that are doing great things. I think our role is, what's our purpose in that sea of institutions, right? I don't think we have to be so unique that we're different than everyone else. I don't think that's necessarily what we need to do. I think we have to say, what are the things that we do, and then just do them really, really, really well, and make sure that we are creating an environment that becomes attractive. We are a regional public university, so a majority of our students come from within a 5-hour drive of here, right? A majority of them. But there are some things that we do. We have an outdoor adventure leadership program. We have certain things that are so unique that people come from a long way away specifically for that. And that's great. And so let's celebrate the heck out of those things. But let's also say, but we have business and psychology and education and things that probably look very similar to other schools. And that's okay. Let's just do those things really well as a part of it.
I don't know if you know this, Rick.
I'm going to hang out with you until the end of time.
I like what you're saying. You're flipping a conversation that we often have in this podcast, which is the value of higher education is in decline, or at least perception of higher ed is in decline. Got to scramble to stand out. You got to scramble to become the red apple of the bunch, differentiate, do these things. You're saying the only way to restore I'm paraphrasing, but
Sure.
Part of restoring the value of higher education is to say, we are already doing good work. We just need to make sure that work, that the students are seeing that value and that we do it well. And that's okay. I like that.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And it's interesting because a related kind of, and I know that you've had this conversation with guests too, is about growing, right? So everyone talks about the demographic cliff, and there are fewer students in high school, and so that means that the pool of candidates has dropped. Yes, that's true. However, Oregon ranks 43rd in the country. Oregon ranks 43rd in the percentage of students who go from high school into college. So,
Yikes!
yeah. So it's interesting. Even with the demographic cliff, you can make the argument that there are so many students we don't serve currently that there is still an opportunity for us, if we, depending on how we act, to be a better service. The other thing is, I think a lot of us, and by the way, I've been guilty of this too, that, hey, the way forward in terms of fiscal responsibility and everything is we have to grow. We have to grow as an institution in order to do it. You know, I'm starting to change my attitude on that. And I don't know if that is the healthy way, because it's also not just about growing the pipeline into the door. It better be about growing the pipeline to the graduation stage.
For sure.
And so if you're not doing both, I think that's problematic. So there is another argument to say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe it's not necessarily for us. All right, we're 5,300 students. It might not be, hey, let's grow to 6,000 or 7,000. It might be, let's just keep it at 5 and just serve those students really well and get as many to them of them to the graduation stage as we can. And
now, somebody's listening to this. Somebody's listening to this going,
"Are you kidding me?"
But I have to tell you, I agree like 115%. So the university that I came, you know, let me try to not personalize it too much, but I also think that there's a big question on how to grow. And universities are going, okay, look, we're going to go out and we're going to get all these adult students. Even though our university might be engineered for the 18-year-old traditional student, we're just going to go out and get all these adult students. We're going to get them all online. To do that, we have to functionally, our mindset has to shift and we have to think differently and the model has to change. We have to do all these things. Can we do that? And should we do that? Versus like, this is the way to grow. Should we really do that? Or maybe it makes more sense to say, we are overbuilt a little bit. And I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying there are certain universities that should look and say we're overbuilt with our current model. Maybe we should be 500 students less and just drill amazing education and outcomes into that student body. But there's so many, we always have this mindset to grow the board. Right? Yeah. So think about the training you have to do to the board, to everyone. But it is true. Sometimes we become overbuilt as an institution, as a higher ed itself has become overbuilt, and there's a race to grow. Maybe that's not the right path.
Yeah, it's a good point, Joe. And I think about it the same way. So, you know, if we, and by the way, you could also distill this down. It's not wise, but you could distill this down to a math problem, right? If I look at, if we had 500 fewer students, but all of them got to the graduation stage, I'm going to go on a limb without I'm doing the math in my head. I would venture to say that we would that a lot of our fiscal resource challenges would be gone. If you could do that, they would be gone
only because you did this in your head.
It's fuzzy math.
But that's the only one. That's the only button I had related to math.
And in this head, it's super fuzzy.
But you're saying, hypothetically, because you focus your resources, because you can move the resources to more focused areas, hypothetically, your retention and persistence go up to an amount that ends up in greater tuition revenue, greater funding, or whatever.
Correct.
Because Yeah.
And as a public institution, we also, in Oregon, we also receive state funding in part based on student success. So if we have more students earning bachelor's degrees, more Oregon students getting bachelor's degrees, well, then we get rewarded by the state for that. So that also kind of weighs into that calculus.
Is that when you say student success, is it the completion of the degree that the state recognizes?
Yes. Okay. There is a little bit on course completion, but ultimately it's about degree completion.
So this is a really fascinating conversation, one that we often have to have more, which is how do we stop doing things that we're doing right now that may not yield us the results we want, because we try it, and every higher ed institution is like this. Like, we got to do this, and we got to try that, and we got to have this program, and we need to do this. And next thing you know, you have no resources for anything, but you have 50 things that you're putting resources into. It's like, how do we stop doing something?
Yeah, we have been a victim of that huge. And so, and I think when you and I met, Joe, I probably shared this. So I've been here at SOU for right a little above over 3 years. And my third day on the job here, we had a board meeting, our quarterly board meeting. And in that board meeting, we show, okay, here's the budget, here's the pro forma, and it was the first time I had seen it really in depth to that degree. And what that pro forma showed was that we were on a path, a short path, like within 2 years, to be 20% underwater, 20%. Wow. And that's not, and we're not sitting with a huge reserve. So we didn't have the luxury. So there was no honeymoon period. There was no luxury.
When are you going to fix this on day 4?
Yeah, it was. So we had to come together. And I will say, I'm really proud of this. Our faculty and staff, our students, everyone came together. It wasn't easy, but we really had to answer the question that you just brought up. And we, like a lot of other institutions, were really good at starting things and terrible at stopping things. And so there was no accountability mechanism for anything. So we came up with a crisis response plan called SOU Forward. It had 4 big muscle movements as a part of it. And but the last page of that plan has 5 questions. Now it's called, here on campus, it's called the 5 questions. And it's basically, anytime we're going to invest in something new, we should do it. We should be risk tolerant, right? We should be open to innovate new ideas. But when we do that, there are 5 questions we have to answer. Basically, what's the initiative? What's it going to cost? What's the time horizon? How do we measure it? But the 5th question is, what are we going to commit to right now if we don't hit the targets that we think we might, and be okay with that, right? And if you can get to that mindset, this accountability mindset, then you can start to move forward. And we just hadn't had anything like that in place. And by the way, I'll confess, it's still a work in progress. Right, we're still trying to figure out, how do we hold ourselves accountable for ideas and not criticize ourselves too much if something doesn't work. That's okay. If we tried it, didn't work, then let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I think it was Michael Jordan that said that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah,
which is true. But at some point, you have to stop taking shots if you keep missing, or you have to focus on, right? You have to stop. Maybe you have to pass, or you have to, bring in other teammates who are shooting better than you. So there's a team aspect to this too, right?
Yeah, there is. And it's really about building a mindset, almost a cultural mindset of, we have to be willing to step out on the edge once in a while. We shouldn't be reckless. Like, let's not do that, but let's be willing to take some chances. But in order to do that, we have to be willing to acknowledge our failures and then pivot. I always say if I look toward the middle part of the 21st century, the universities, the colleges and universities that are going to thrive are going to have 3 things in common. They will be the most nimble, they'll be the most creative, and they'll be the most collaborative. To me, that's the key to the ball game. And in terms of creative is about like being innovative and trying new things, and that's great. Nimble means, hey, you've got to pivot if it's not working, and be okay with that, and accept it, and then take those precious resources and channel them into the next idea. So that's a fact.
That's a fact.
So it's interesting that you say this, because these nimble, creative, and collaborative, right now as we record this, there's an interesting cognitive dissonance happening in higher education. You have on one side, call it environmental, and I don't mean the actual environment, but environmental scanning and disruption in regulatory environments, political landscape, and so on. Simultaneously, you have artificial intelligence saying, think forward, think forward, think forward. And so it's like a sort of like a vice grip almost of I don't know how much we have to rethink what we're doing in certain aspects. We have to worry about funding and modeling and what this disruption might do to us. So all of a sudden I'm losing focus on the thinking forward that I have to do because artificial intelligence is out there. And if I am not thinking about artificial intelligence all the time, it can pass me by too quick, but I have to worry about the stuff that's happening right now. And I'm going crazy. and I'm going
Yeah.
crazy at the same time, and I'm losing
Yeah,
my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
And I got the students coming and knocking on my door, and Rick Bailey's knocking on my door going, accountability mindset. How do I keep this all? I mean, how do you as a leader, there's so much going on, keeping the faith, keeping the focus?
Yeah, it's obviously that's the question, Joe. I think there's so many ways to answer that. So let me start with what you've just described is really causing, I think, within the enterprise a real anxiety. We did a survey here at Southern Oregon University about a year ago, and we surveyed all of these students who left SOU without their degree. And by the way, left without their degree and didn't go to another institution.
Which
So
is actually the majority of students, by the way, when they leave without a degree. They don't go anywhere else. They just don't.
Yeah, they just gone. And so my question was, in my mind, we have failed them, right? What are the things that we could have done better? And so it was really just asking, trying to glean that. What could we have done better as an institution? And the expectation, what we thought we were going to hear from these students was cost, right? Hey, I had to get a third job, or, I had a grandparent get sick and I had to do, so, because life happens, right?
Right.
And so we thought that finances were going to be the number one answer. And that actually was number 7 on the list.
I would have gone 3. I guess would have been 3.
Yeah. The number one answer was social and emotional wellness. Wow. And it was really a wake-up call for us that, all of the anxiety that you just talked about that really faculty and staff are feeling, well, students are feeling that too, because they're also in this environment where there is so much uncertainty and things are being, and it's so frenetic, right? There is just so much, so chaotic. There's so much going on. Well, it's hard to concentrate in an environment like that. And so, this is a long answer to your question, but I kind of think it's our job as higher education leaders to think about how do we help the institution and all of those on our team, students, faculty, and staff, how do we navigate the chaos, and how do we separate all the noise out of it, right? And by the way, AI is not part of that noise. That's a real issue. We've got to incorporate that into what we do. So I'm going to date myself here.
Do it.
Really date myself here. Because I know that you and I are in a different generation. When I was growing up, so much of what we learned was based on memorization. And our relationship to information often involves something physical. So you're a lot younger than I am, but for me, if you wanted, and I'm going to apologize to most of your podcast audience, because I am sure there is probably a younger demographic in this, but growing up, if you wanted a phone number, there was a book that had phone numbers in it. If you wanted a book in a library, which libraries had books, there was a catalog, a card catalog that you went.
Dewey Decimal System.
Yes.
I'm not so sure we're that far apart, my friend.
Okay. Well, then you're taking a lot better care of yourself. So there was encyclopedias, right, instead of the internet. So there was a physical act in terms of accessing information. Well, today a lot of our students, you've probably heard the term digital native and digital immigrant. A lot of our students are digital natives. They have grown up in an environment where their fundamental relationship with information has changed, and where their access to information is far different and doesn't involve as much of a physical act, right? They just pull their phone out and type a question in and they can get, and AI is going to make that even more powerful. Well, they're doing studies of brain architecture of digital immigrants and digital natives, and they're finding that the electrical signals are firing fundamentally differently, right? So to me, it means, and when you introduce AI into this, it means that the way our brains are wired and the way the dendrites and the synapses and all of that's, it's fundamentally restructuring. And so as educators, we need to be respectful of that change. And then we need to adapt to how students are learning. If you go into a fifth grade math class today, those students are learning fundamentally differently than I did. And that's okay, right? It's progress because of the way our minds have developed. I think with AI, we need to do the same thing. The same way that when the calculator became something that we could actually access reasonably easily, we had to change the way we taught math because you didn't need to memorize times tables anymore. What you needed to do was really understand how math is applied, right? And so I think similarly, we will have that conversation with AI. Those who do it best will be saying, how do we incorporate this into education in a way that leverages it, that still builds upon some of the foundational principles for how we do inductive and deductive reasoning, but then also recognizes that we have this powerful tool. That's not perfect, by the way, but we have this powerful tool. Through all of it, we're going to have some foundational understanding of critical reasoning, right? And to be able to think critically about the things to which we are exposed. And that's harder now than ever.
Bullseye.
Sorry, that was so much, Joe. That was so much.
It was so good because I will tell you, I have a fifth grader and I am in the middle of fifth grade math.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I find it to be pretty difficult, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the smartest doctor around here, academic doctor, but some of the ways, of course, I do the same thing that you would do. My daughter comes home and she says, I have homework. And I say, where's your paper? Where's the paper?
Right.
Where's the
right.
book? And she said, I don't have one. It's on the computer. And I say, I'm not letting you get on the computer. Once you get on the computer, you try to surf the internet. You need to do your homework. And she says, I don't have any other paper. I have to be on my computer. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then when my kids both, they'll say, Papa, I don't know the answer to this question. And I'll leave the room and say, you need to figure it out. I want to see it on paper. I want you to try 3 different ways to figure it out. And I leave the room and I hear, Alexa, what's, 245 minus 100. And
right.
I'm just going, you know what? I would never have thought that they would do that or think to do it. But of course you will. Alexa's the human calculator sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
So you're right. The way we're engineered, the way the synapses, the way we think, it's all completely different. Now, on your campus at Southern Oregon University, the staff, the faculty, the adoption of AI is so rapidly dispersed. It's not like we're all starting from the middle and we need to train everybody up. There's one person that's probably coming into your office going, Dr. Bailey, I tried so-and-so program. You got to check this out. I moved this so fast and I saved myself an hour. And then you go and you tell somebody, hey, guess what, person? Somebody told me you could save an hour of this. And I've never even used AI before, so I don't know what you're talking about, Dr. Bailey. And you just go, how the heck do we deal with this?
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And I know it's happening here, and I know it's happening all over the country, and all over the world, actually. So this is part of human behavior, right? When there is something new, there is typically a bifurcation, right? And so you have the Luddites, who, and by the way, I am not critiquing either group. You'll have groups that are so fearful of that change that they are going to dig their claws in and say, "This we cannot do this." By the way, we also had, as we moved through the pandemic, and it happened on every campus, right? The students and faculty who really struggled with having to move things online, right? That just like I don't teach like that. Well, they did eventually,
you were
right?
Forced. It was
they
kind
were
of
forced.
A forced situation.
Yeah, and so as AI started to really kind of enter the zeitgeist, there was this. I know that there was this group of folks who were saying, "Oh well, you know what? We're going to have to go back to essays with a blue book," which is again for younger listeners, it was a little essay book that you would, with a pen, that you would do essays in class, and it was the only way to ensure that you weren't cheating is because you had to write it in class.
Inconceivable.
Yes, so we had those, but then you have others who are really on the leading edge and like really wanting to dive in and test it. And by the way, on the extreme side of that are those who go so deep into it without really understanding potentially moral implications and other things that are about. And and the answer is somewhere in the middle, right? The goal is hopefully somewhere in the middle, but to try to bring everyone along, because there is a new landscape that if we're not thinking about it, we're doing ourselves and our students a disservice.
So good. And a big job for us in higher ed. And one of the worries that I have, or thoughts that I have had, because we're not there yet, right? Students are sort of freaked out in some institutions, or some people I talk to still going, I talked to a faculty member at so-and-so university that said if they find out any students using AI, they're going to fail the class immediately, and that's the end. So now I'm scared to death to use it. But when I get out into the workforce on day one on the job, they're going to say, do you know how to use artificial intelligence? And so we already have this knock on us that we're not preparing graduates for the workforce, which I think is completely false. I think that there are, it's like the storytelling. For every one person that complains, there's 9 people that are silent. I think that's their education too.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of thousands and millions of people out there happy with their degree jobs and love it. Just don't say anything. But you look at come on bringing that all the way back around to students and jobs and AI and how we properly train. What are we doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, this is incumbent upon us. The Nimble Creative Collaborative, we started something here about 6 months ago, and we call it the President's Employers Roundtable. And so we have all of these big employers around the Rogue Valley here in Southern Oregon. And it's wonderful because these CEOs are not shy about saying, and we've approached them with this humility, like, hey, what are the things that we need to do better? What are the things that you want our graduates to know that we're not giving to them yet so that we can be better? And when you frame it like that, then employers are really good about saying, okay, well, if you ask them to take the gloves off, they'll take the gloves off and they'll say, hey, here's some other things that we need. And one of those is what you just said. Like, hey, I want new employees here who are not afraid to use AI to help us do a strategic plan.
Nailed it.
Or to build a marketing plan, or to do data analysis, or all of these things that are really kind of the new frontier in a lot of enterprise and business. Well, this is the laboratory, right? This is the place where we should be playing around with that stuff and experimenting. And by the way, we haven't even talked about ideas and politics and all of that, because obviously that's taken, that's been really flooding the headlines for higher ed over the last several weeks. I think we're a laboratory for that too. We're a place where we should be willing to have these conversations. There's only 2 places in American democracy, in my mind, where people should intentionally come together and talk about things about which they don't agree. One is legislatures, because they have to write laws. And 2 is higher ed, colleges and universities. This is the place where you should be able to kind of walk that walk and test things out and listen to other people who are different and listen to understand them. This is the place to do it. So
tell them like it is.
I hear often, I hear often among college presidents, and I agree, that it takes 3 years it takes that first 2 years to get your foundation at your college or university and get through all this. You got to go through a couple cycles, whether you're, no matter what kind of academic calendar you're on, but certainly if you have a standard academic year, you got to get through a couple of recruitment cycles, a couple of retention, persistence cycles, outcomes, a couple graduations to go, okay, I've really identified where we can make improvements. So you're in your 3rd year. So it's like that 3rd year where you can really start to create that foundational change. Do you believe that's, would you back that statement up? And if so, if not, tell me why. But if so, what's different about year 3?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to say yes and no, Joe. I think in theory, I think that's true. So I had a retired university president tell me one time, there are 2 types of leaders. There's the type of leader that goes in and basically tries to force the institution into their personal mindset, and you know where that probably leads. And the other that takes the time to really learn about the culture of the institution and then becomes its biggest champion, right? Um, even that is problematic. I think the answer is somewhere. It's certainly closer to B than A, but I do think because institutions, just like any large organization, can get entrenched and they can get glacial and they can get calcified in their thinking. And so it's important to shake things up a little bit. And it's important to challenge an institution to think beyond itself sometimes. And so I think presidents can be in a position to help that transformation. I think if that happens during a first year, Joe, you're right. I think that's a recipe for disaster. So I do think that you need to be mindful and respectful of the culture of the institution and give it time to really absorb and understand it. But the reason I push back a little bit is because, if you're, and all too often now, new presidents come into an environment where there is a freight train coming at it. And so there is no time you've got to start to make changes immediately. When I was brought here, there was no time. So it has to be a cultural jarring kind of metamorphosis almost, just in order to move past the danger. And so that happened. At the same time, I was still trying to say, look, this is what makes this institution hum. And let me be really respectful and mindful of that. And let me buy into and be a champion for the things that make this place the beautiful place it is. And so both of those things were happening at the same time. Now that a lot of that crisis is that we're beyond that, now I think we're in a position as an institution to really now look for what does it mean for us to thrive in the future. And so that's where the Nimble Creative Collaborative really starts to kind of take us from where we are into the stratosphere. And that is about getting everyone to kind of buy into that future. And so that's a different intellectual endeavor, right? And it's a different leadership endeavor than the one that I faced 3 years ago.
Epic.
I have to say, a lot of people wouldn't have stepped into that role. Even if you didn't know the full story that you're going to be 20% underwater.
Yeah.
Even if it was 5% or 10% or even, there are a lot of people that I know personally that would go, you know what? That's a dicey one. I'm not sure I'm interested in that. I want to maybe look at something that's a little bit safer and be there for a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. What attracted you to basically a turnaround situation in many ways?
You are throwing some fastballs. This is good. Did I fully understand the scope of the problem? No. This is my second presidency. Both institutions had some pretty significant challenges that I really started to fully understand once I got there. I don't want to make this about me. It's not about my ability to overcome challenges. It's not any of that. I think most every president right now, and certainly every president at a regional public, I think everyone is dealing with very similar challenges. I think that's the higher landscape. So I don't know any president or colleague that walked into a situation where everything's great. Like I just don't. I don't know it. So I think we're always wired to be ready to solve that. But the other thing,
was it the place? Was it the people? Was it it
was the sweet spot. So it was the fact that it was a big enough place that it had all of these opportunities for students, and yet it was a small enough place that it had this very intentional, personalized focus. And I've talked about it publicly since taking this job, and it's the thing I didn't really fully understand until I got here. But the thing that knits all of it together for us is love. That's the thing that is, it's more important than anything else that we do here. And so, that's something that I didn't even fully understand. Now I recognize that I'm sitting on a winning lottery ticket by being here. But getting back to the question, that there have been times when I have really struggled, and this is a lonely job, and so there's a lot of and there's really no safety net, so you're kind of out on an island sometimes. But my dad so I was a 24-year Air Force pilot, military veteran.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Oh, thanks, Joe. And my dad is a 30-year military veteran, and so I kind of turn to him, and sometimes when I'm in the what am I going to do? How are we going to move out of this, and that kind of stuff. And my dad said something so powerful to me one time. He goes, "Hey, Rick, you're not the leader there for when things are good. You're the leader there for when things are hard." And it really stuck with me. And then right after that, he told me to pull up my big boy pants and
I think I might have a recording of your dad. Accent might not be right, but here it is.
Oh, no. It's time now to turn this mush into muscles.
That's what he said to you. But
that is basically it. Yeah, if my dad were Austrian, that's exactly how he said it. Yeah, and so, there are times in every position. And by the way, this isn't just presidents. I think with everything in higher ed, there are challenges all the time, and we're dealing with so much of it. I don't lose sight of the fact that every day here is a gift, even with the chaos, even with the challenges, even with the budgets, even with it's a gift because we have an opportunity to be of service in such a beautiful way. I am inspired by what students, faculty, and staff do for each other here. And by the way, everyone listening to this, everyone associated with a campus, you see that on your campus every day. And so I think it's just a reminder of why we do what we do. That's the magic stuff.
Okay, so we're going to bring you back for a subscriber-only episode. I want to talk to you about the accountability mindset just a little bit. Before I do that, yep. I want to give you an opportunity. Open mic. What else do you want to say? 2 more questions. What else do you want to say about Southern Oregon University? Anything at all, and then I'll give you the final and go from there.
Yeah, thanks. So, I am really, really proud and grateful of this school. And I appreciate it in ways that are beyond my way to share that with their audience. I would say anytime you have the privilege of serving with students, faculty, and staff who keep love at the center of their universe, you can move mountains. And then there's no obstacle too great for that. And that's who we are at Southern Oregon University. So sou.edu is our website, and love for people to reach out to us. And that nimble creative collaborative, that third piece of that is not just a tagline. I always say that there are partners that we have, and there are partners that we need to have. And one that we don't know yet is a partner we need to have. So we're going to start every question with yes, and then figure out how to do it.
I love that. But one of the gentlemen I used to work for a long time ago would say, the answer is yes. What is the question?
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you're serving a student. The answer is yes. What's the question?
Absolutely. Yep.
It would get disrupted every now and then, but for the most part, you'd be good. Tell us what you see for the future of higher education.
Did you buy your tickets yet? Higher Education's first podcast conference is coming July 12th. Go to higheredpodcon.com, higheredpodcon.com. Get your tickets.
Yeah, it depends on the time horizon. So, I think within the next few years, our focus really has to be on recommitting to the value of higher ed, right? And there is so much misinformation and disinformation about the value of higher ed, and yet the data is so clear on the power of higher education, right? And not just $1 million more in earning potential over the lifetime, but it's also social determinants of health. It's all social, emotional, all these things that higher education provides. I think we need to make sure that that's a focus area for us, certainly for the next 5 to 10 years. If I look beyond that, I think that higher education is going to need to fundamentally adapt in the ways that kind of bring back to your previous question about AI. And that is things like a lot of your listeners have probably seen a movie called The Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Where, you can, hey, I need to learn how to fly a helicopter, and something, it just gets injected into your brain, and then you're out there doing it. I told you earlier about brain architecture, right? And we don't have, at least to my knowledge, we don't have the instrumentation yet to measure down to the synapse level, right? We don't have something that can measure that specific, but we will someday.
Yep.
And this gets super weird, super fast, this conversation. But as a university president, I think, okay, well, 30 years from now, if we have the ability to do that, then how does that change what we talked about before? Right now, it's almost as big, maybe even bigger than a cell phone in terms of, or smartphone in terms of how transformational that would be. Because now things that are rote memory potentially could get injected, right? It's just an electrical signal. You can program an electrical signal. Then I think higher education will not be so much about knowledge as much as it will be about experiential learning and experiential, so it will be about, it will almost be about the Socratic method.
Yeah. Like
It'll
physical
almost be
experiences,
Yes. And discovery.
Yeah.
Right. How do you come to this knowledge on your own without it being something that you see or exposed to? How do you come to those realizations? And so I'm excited, by the way. I think there are ways in which the university, the ways in which the academy does that really well organically. So I think we will have to double down on those experiences for students, and then accept the fact that there are some things that we can just program. But what a fundamental change that will be. Again, you're asking the question, what do we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I don't want to fly the helicopter. I would like to learn Kung Fu at a black belt level immediately. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, he's my guest. We're going to bring him back quickly for an subscriber-only episode. He's said a lot today. Make sure you follow him. Find him on LinkedIn. He's the one and only.
Thanks, Joe.
He's the president of Southern Oregon University.
Yeah!
You've just upped.